So, it's October again, which means it's time to spend the entire month drinking overpriced lattes and watching scary movies. I made one of these a few years back, recommending 10 alternative horror movies in order to help bring some variety to the typical scary movie canon, and you guys seem to really like that one, so here's the belated sequel to that video. These are 5 underrated horror movies to watch this Spooktober season.
You know, what happened? Something is really, really wrong with me. What happened? I get this ache, and I thought it was for sex, but it's to tear everything into fucking pieces.
Starting the list off is, in my opinion, perhaps the very definition of an underrated horror movie, that being Ginger Snaps. This is an incredibly witty, intelligent, and subversive werewolf film, and it's loaded with charm. The central sisters' relationship is incredibly well realized, and so are the themes of coming of age and puberty. Karen Walton's screenplay helped gain this film an instant cult following, and it's a fantastic female-centered take on the genre, both endlessly quotable and incredibly genre-literate. Emily Perkins and Catherine Isabella, who also starred in American Mary, which I featured on my previous video, expertly bring our leads to life, and there's a reason Ginger herself has become so iconic within the horror genre. The film is also delightfully 2000s in so many ways, from the fashion to the dialogue to the soundtrack, and considering that this is over 20 years old now, that has gone right the way back around to being a rather fun part of the film. Ginger Snaps has definitely had a lasting influence on horror, spawning 2 sequels, with the second film in the series actually being quite decent, and it was also a major influence on Jennifer's Body, which itself has become a cult hit since its release. Though some of the filmmaking in this leaves something to be desired, and many of the supporting performances are in fact laughable, I have yet to meet anyone who didn't find this a memorable watch, and it's a film that I absolutely love to keep going back to.
It's like, I feel like a kangaroo with like a pouch inside, and it has to let go. Like, you have to let it go. Dude, how was it? It was like screaming. I felt like Nev Campbell or like, you know, like
I'll let you know if I ever talk about something quite this obscure again on my channel. Limbo is about as DIY and lo-fi as a movie can get. Shot entirely on video, but this is no schlocky B-movie. Director Tina Kraus took influences across genres from slasher to of-the-time avant-garde video collage to craft a film which, in my opinion, stands totally unique in the genre. The film was made in 1999 and does things that David Lynch would later explore in Inland Empire, some 7 years later. Kraus's creativity consistently shines through in this film, and considering she had 2 lead actresses quit on her, it's amazing that the film was even finished, let alone the fact that it's this good. Its grungy aesthetic makes the film's imagery even more unsettling, and its off-kilter free-flowing narrative allows for much of the film to be left up entirely to interpretation. The film's industrial soundscape is crushing, and clearly takes a lot of influence from Eraserhead. And just so I can mention Lynch a 3rd time in this review, I'll say that, as skeptical as I was by the film's description that is, quote, what might happen if David Lynch and 9 Inch Nails collaborated in a shot-on-video home movie? It's actually pretty accurate. It's a shame Kraus didn't direct more. It's clear from the interviews with her on the Blu-ray special features just how well thought out her directing was. This film is 100% not for everyone, and its budget and format means it's got a lot of problems. The lighting, especially during any nighttime sequences, is basically non-existent, and there's a lot of incredibly bad performances in this. That being said, I found myself absolutely glued to this one. The film very recently got an official looking upload on YouTube, which has a bunch of ads in the middle, so if that sounds like your cup of tea, I would go watch that before it becomes near impossible again to find.
哀れなものだ。ショッカーか。僕はこの唯一の楽しみに取りすがった。
あなたの言う通り、モデルになるわ。
長い間この体を探してたんだ。1000人に1人、万人に1人。僕の大好きな体だ。
Okay, now time for a proper masterpiece. Directed by cult director Yasuzo Matsumura, this Japanese film belongs to the Uroguro genre of exploitation cinema, which means it explores the intersection between eroticism and horror. And if I've just said a bunch of new words to you, please don't be put off by that. This film is captivating. Masumura's direction is expert, and the way he lights and shoots what for the most part is a single location is a masterclass in balancing captive claustrophobia with a real sense of the cinematic. The set design is psychedelic and strange, and it's disorientating as our character runs around this art studio studio. It's a movie that moves between being contemplative and absolutely outlandish, ending with a hallucinatory and boundary-pushing sequence that must have been shocking back in 1969. I'm not sure how well this is aged, and we are firmly in vintage exploitation here, but this very much does transcend the genre, mixing melodrama with sleaze and horror with philosophical twinges. If you'd like to push further into Japanese genre film or new wave, then this has got to be firmly on your watch list. It's a film that balances many aspects, both in terms of genre and style, and I really look forward to checking out more of Matsumura's work soon. And now for something completely different. This Senegalese action horror went straight to Shadow last year and has already become known as a bit of a hidden gem. Part siege movie, part creature feature, and with an interesting dose of history and politics thrown in, this is a film that's got a lot to chew on while it never loses sight of its first goal of providing popcorn thrills. All the main characters are interesting and charismatic, and the 2:39:1 cinematography gives the film a real blockbuster sensibility, which is a shame considering that it went straight to streaming. It's a well-paced movie with a lot of twists and turns, and there's lots of mysteries that unravel throughout the plot, and these are probably the strongest aspects of the film's script. The politics and historical context is incredibly interesting, but probably are going to require a bunch of googling from audiences outside of the region, because annoyingly there's this massive continent called Africa, which we British are never taught about despite the fact we've done our fair share of meddling there ourselves. As this is a list of horror films, you can probably work out something strange is brewing underneath it all. While the film's tonal shift is handled pretty well, there is some very dodgy CGI which holds the second half back quite a bit. Action horror is a fairly narrow genre, the creme de la creme of which is still the original version of Predator. And while this is nowhere near as good as that, if you're wanting something to scratch that itch, and also want to watch something from a country that you may not have seen any films from, Saloum is definitely one to seek out.
No, they let them overrun us. They have overrun us, you know. We're in the minority now. Something like 400,000 to 1 by my calculations. I haven't eaten. Is there food?
You were supposed to be here at 7 o'clock sharp, mister.
I know. Sarah told me. I'm sorry I couldn't break away. Is there food?
Listen, egghead, let me bring you up to date on what's been...
Excuse me! Is there food?
I'm running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein, and I want to know what the fuck you're doing with my time!
Now let's end with a cult classic, shall we? And before anyone comments about Day of the Dead not being underrated, I know it's having a reconsideration of late. But unlike The Shining, for example, this one is still very haunted by its original reception. The third part of George Romero's trilogy of the Dead, with its two more famous entries being Night of and Dawn of, this entry was initially met with a lot of disappointment upon release. Despite the fact that it's not only as good as the previous films, but frankly, depending on what day you get me, I could be tempted to call this the best one. If Night was about racism and Dawn was about consumerism, this one centers on militarism, and it's an expert exploration of the Reagan era. The tensions between the scientists trying to end the zombie apocalypse with the military trying to simply manage it is quite engaging. And you know what? It's actually really well acted. It's tense and gripping, and the effects, oh boy, this is Tom Savini's magnum opus. The film's climax is a cornucopia of carnage that any horror fan has to see. Beyond that, however, the interplay between the characters and the movie's themes make the film's build-up hugely entertaining itself, and this is definitely Romero's best written dialogue. It's really refreshing to see this film finally get the recognition it deserves, with the trilogy as a whole standing as one of the all-time greats. If you've not seen any one of these, then they're an absolute must-watch, and if you're a fan of Night of the Living Dead, then maybe you'd want to check out my video essay on the subject too. It's very well researched in my opinion. I hope I've introduced you to at least one new film in this video, but what do you think is the most underrated horror movie? Please let me know in the comments because I am always looking for more recommendations. And while you're at it, please like this video and subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider tipping me on Ko-Fi. The link is in the description, and also in the description is the link to my podcast, the Extreme Cinema Podcast. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.